give us just a moment while Craig gets logged in over here and start Mata, and then we'll have a fun time with everyone. Let me just take a quick look over here, LinkedIn. Oh, okay. All right, so those of us, or those of you, us, that are on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, if you have questions for Craig, post them in the text chat. I'll relay them to Craig once he's logged in over here on Start Mata, and then get your answers for you. And then also, if you're working on something, you just want some insight, some feedback, some advice, please share. Craig will be able to build on what you're doing and offer some input. That's always fun too, if you don't have a question ready. There we go. There we go. Excellent. Okay, cool. All right, so we're live. We got people on multiple platforms watching us. Craig, how about you introduce yourself to everyone?
All right. So my name's Craig Silverstein. I've been on a couple startup journeys, both as a consultant and as a founder. I founded my first tech company in 2012, which was entertainment tech oriented. And then I came up through getting closer and closer towards the consulting side. I was building teams around the globe for a company called Deluxe. May have heard of them. They're kind of like a Technicolor. And then I got deeper and deeper into consulting and started helping startups kind of with their go-to-market strategies, their competitive intelligence, and linked up with a company called SyncSketch, which was my last really successful founders had a really successful exit, getting sold to Unity Technologies. And then from there, went into Unity for a little bit, was helping a couple of their acquisitions kind of hit growth milestones and help them become more efficient and integrate into Unity through business operations. And then after leaving Unity, I went back to consulting and now actually started up my own startup where I am. It's called Minerva Engine, is our kind of flagship product where we are working on human and AI collaborative business intelligence and strategic intelligence to help companies kind of get in a way, it's kind of democratizing what you would imagine top tier consulting firms delivering for companies to analyze the market, the competitive landscape, and really scale to hit growth milestones, both from a strategic standpoint, but also from a merger and acquisition standpoint, where there might be private equity firms looking to purchase a company, and we help them kind of see what growth drivers there are and synergies there are between a potential M&A scenario or just adding to their portfolio. So that's what I'm working on now. It's a fun journey so far.
Right on. Yeah, I love having people like you with a lot of different hats and experiences in different areas of entrepreneurship, but also, as an employee and being part of the team, which is always important to have respect for and help everyone kind of recognize that the success of a company is not just reliant on one person. It's everyone working together and having like a strong cohesion with that. And I'm curious with your background while we wait for people. AJ, welcome. William, Boyne. Yeah, if any of you want to jump on stage, ask Craig questions, raise your hand, or just let me know in chat on Start Mata. And those, again, that are joining on YouTube, Twitch, or LinkedIn, use the text chat to share what you're working on or ask questions, and I'll relay them to Craig. But yeah, Craig, having been a founder, having worked in different companies, I'm curious what your biggest takeaways are in regards to that appreciation for a team working together. What kind of lessons or warnings can you give to people that want to be successful founders in relation to that?
Yeah. So that's a great topic. The One of the big things that especially founders need to understand when they start out, they're developing their product and they're building things. They kind of have a really kind of solopreneur intimate relationship with the problem they're solving, the industry they're solving the problem for, and what they're doing. And as a founder gets further and further along the journey of trying to figure out product market fit, building their team out, and realizing that it is a collaboration, there's a lot of different functions involved in a successful, not just product launch, but company launch. It gets very elaborate. And one thing that I like to tell founders is that the team dynamic is very important, and it should be in a successful company kind of operate the way you imagine an octopus operating. And people are typically like, what the heck are you talking about, an octopus? And what I mean by that typically is that octopuses actually have their kind of master brain that they are that kind of drives their full body and system and makes strategic decisions for them to survive, one of the best survivors in the ocean. But each of their arms actually has their own mini brain that has a sense of autonomy at the same time. So everything operates in a way where there is this kind of central purpose or mission or essence really driving what the company does, just like that main brain in an octopus. But then you have each individual arm that is smart enough to also operate on its own while keeping the kind of one essence, one being, one organism alive, which is very much the way a company runs, and the way successful companies run.
I love that. Yeah, questions. Ask them. That's why you're here, people. I want to pick Craig's brain from your perspective, not mine. But while we wait, we'll continue to build on this. So this came up in Discord community that I also have. Moats. You're doing a lot with AI. A lot of people are thinking that AI is removing moats from companies. I'm curious your thoughts on this. Uh, got a little bit of a pushback. I was the one pushing back on this a little bit because I come from like a creative background, photographer. I see a lot of these conversations come up over the last, 40 years I've been alive. So 30 years in regards to new technologies coming out, especially again in creative fields, whether it was, color versus black and white film, which I missed, but it happened. And then going from digital to from film to digital, and then going from digital big cameras to, oh my gosh, these little phone cameras have more megapixels than the first digital cameras. And now it's AI versus an actual photographer or an artist. And it's always been the same conversation, and it comes down to, well, these people that are really competing at that level are the ones that are operating at the lowest rung in the market. They're competing on price, and their prices are not really viable. And the only time they are is if they're coming from like another territory country where a U.S. dollar goes a lot further, and they're ultimately putting themselves in a place to be exploited regardless. And at the end of the day, if you're a sound business operator and you're aware of these different elements that make up a business's success, a simple little technology like AI allowing someone else to do something isn't the biggest moat that one may think it is. And given your experience, what you're building with AI and how you're utilizing it, and also, as an advisor, as a founder, what would you say in regards to this concept of AI removing moats and what moats those actually are in the marketplace?
Yeah. So that's a very complex question. And it's one that's a very hot topic for a lot of companies of almost every size. When you think about the impact of AI, a lot of people start with like what it is, what it threatens, and how it is transforming a lot of roles. And I like the word transforming because it is a transformation for the world, and each individual company and each individual industry. So when you look at something like Okay, now the ability to be able to create images super fast in mass, that is a reality. Like people can do that with tools as simple as ChatGPT, where they're typing in what they want to see and it spits out something relatively close, depending on how you prompt it. And that is a reality. People are able to do that, and that does save time and money for a lot of tasks. But what that does is, in one respect, it does commoditize the ability to be able to create images. Does it commoditize the use case of images across the board? Absolutely not. Um, there are very specific goals that companies have for using images, and I think the attachment and the presence that a company wants to have and the impact that a company wants to have has a lot more to do with the mode of creating images than just spitting out the image itself. And I think that that goes for a lot of things. If you look at clothing manufacturers that do the least harm to the environment, that have like Patagonia was a huge one that kind of prides themselves on being very transparent on what they're using to create their products and things like that. And that creates a culture and a community around a product. And I think that just generating images with AI it's very tough to do that because of how easily it's commoditized. So when you look at the specific goals of a company and what they're using AI for, there's that aspect of commoditization versus the actual deployment of an enterprise's goal and mission and the values around that. So I think that's one aspect. I think the other aspect is that it is a very useful tool to cut down a lot of uh, I don't want to say grunt work, but a lot of work that is repetitious and is absolutely necessary, but easy for a machine to do. And that's a reality too, where that is a use case for AI, whether it's like simple coding on certain things or even cleaning up code. AI is being used very heavily for that now, and that does kind of commoditize a role and kind of like a livelihood that people have going into the job. But it's also transformative. So while it's eliminating a lot of hands-on work that humans used to do, it's not eliminating. It's also creating another aspect and perspective and involvement channel for companies as well. So you see those transformations, and yeah, companies are doing more with less, and AI absolutely accelerates that. At the same time, between the mission and the culture and values that a company projects, and how they're leveraging AI and what their actual goals are and how they're moving forward with that, all play a huge role.
Yeah, I appreciate those insights and the way you put that for sure. And it kind of touches on a lot of what we talk about with these different office hours and what I'm constantly spouting in the community is at the end of the day, all of these different moving parts coalesce into a singular experience that someone's going to have with your product, your service, your company, your brand, different, representations of what your company is and does in the community or, the market. And it's not a single thing that's creating like the end all be all moat in most cases. I mean, a lot of times people think about IP as, that single moat, but you go to any university campus and you go into the archives and you'll find what thousands, tens of thousands, maybe a million different like patents just sitting on the shelves that they can't commercialize because they don't understand how to leverage that IP to produce an enjoyable experience in the market that people are going to, benefit from and find value in at a price point that allows for a company to be viable, sustainable. Um, and so, yeah, all these different elements come together. And I'm curious, as a founder, where's like, the starting point for the foundation of what you want to build. You mentioned like the mission and the culture, and I imagine those are two of those, building blocks that you include. But I'm curious, like, what goes into it, when you're building a company or when you're advising someone else, like, hey, let's take a step back. You're kind of skipping some key steps. Let's make sure we get this done first. What are those main building blocks that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. I think actually my kind of work with Sync Sketch was very exemplary of kind of the complexity and things that go into how to scale a business and make it viable and make it profitable. And I actually have a case study online about Sync Sketch that goes into a lot of that stuff. So if you click into my LinkedIn, you might be able to find that. But another thing that there's companies that can really trigger a viability standpoint with a couple different things going on. One could be just the socioeconomic factors that are happening, and one could be an inciting incident, kind of like what happened with COVID. Sync Sketch was a collaborative application for artists. It's like basically a review tool for animators and game creators and character designers and 3D modeling and things like that. And the fact that it was a collaborative platform for remote teams and distributed teams that are in the entertainment industry is huge when an event comes along like COVID that kind of sparks this now or never moment. And when you're building a product, you have to look at the landscape of the world and what your product is actually doing in this landscape, both from a product standpoint and a product market fit standpoint in terms of fitting your product into the market so that it's actually viable and sells and people want to use it. And the other aspect is making sure that what you're building is sustainable for the company and that your value proposition can lead to profitability. And if it can't, sometimes it's a matter of um, just the wrong time for the product itself. I would be misleading companies if I were to say that every single product is viable if they do certain things. There are some that just like, hey, this is going to be really tough to work. And not that it will never happen, but really tough right now unless certain things kind of change in the world to make something viable. I think the other aspect is in business models. A lot of founders, especially solopreneurs who are going out there trying to create a product and a business model, it's easy to get tunnel vision on one model that you're familiar with and you go for that. And that's why SaaS products are so easy to latch onto with like tiered pricing. They're very straightforward. But one thing to do is getting someone involved in your company who knows monetization strategy, business models, ways to go to market with products. I think it makes a big difference looking at selling a product through a couple different lenses to see how to monetize it in a way that's sustainable. And most founders underprice their product to begin with initially is my experience because they want to see people using their product. And that's not a bad thing because the most important thing a founder could do is to build something that people will use. They've tested that people will use it. They've tested that people will continue to use it. And they've tested that they can increase the usage and the value of the product so that they can charge customers more as they get more familiar and the product becomes stickier with them. And it's not about just charging customers more, it's about providing more value and charging at a sustainable rate. And that's huge.
Oh, absolutely. Again, appreciate you calling attention to these really important points for building a viable, sustainable business. All right, AJ wants to come up and ask some questions. Let me grab you. All right, you should have an invitation now. Nice.
All right. How's it going, AJ?
It's going all right. Hey, Craig, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Good to see you again. I think we met at a lunch a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Mm. So, Craig, the question that I have is, around your company, the next unicorn, and we talked about it a little bit in person the other day. I'm curious, what I do is I help clients, mostly startups, with their strategic partnership strategy. So
Hmm.
within sales, within business development, how can you leverage specific partnerships to increase revenue and expand your reach and all of those things, monetization, business model strategies. Um, and I'm finding that there's more reception to using B2B partnerships as an instrument to grow than there used to be before, because they used to lump it all under sales and BD, and there's still some of that happening. But I'm curious, as you work, for your company, it says over here, you empower investment firms, corporate dev teams, community leaders to improve business outcomes, high impact intelligence and strategy programs, which is great, which kind of, in some ways, is complementary to what I do. uh, could you shed some light into what, the role of partnerships in what you do, and how does that fit into the overall services that you provide to your clients and customers?
Yeah, of course. That's a really good question, and I think you bring up a really good point that partnerships and the idea of partnerships have evolved substantially with the way companies operate and how they're able to monetize their businesses. So, uh, one thing that kind of moving away from the old model of, okay, your partners are your customers and you're just driving revenue through the sale of your product, things have changed substantially where partners take many shapes and forms, and the idea of partnerships helps businesses, especially some that might not have otherwise been sustainable or viable on their own, help them monetize better so that they can actually create new revenue streams and additional revenue streams that are super profitable, and really kind of enhance what a company is able to accomplish. And I like to go back to when you look at Facebook, which was a free app for so long. And I know a lot of people have different perspectives on the monetization strategy that they do have with leveraging data across their platform and what they're gathering. But a lot of people didn't put two and two together with that when Facebook initially came out. They were just thinking, okay, there's this free app. How is it gonna, like, should I ever like invest in this stock when it IPOs? Like, I remember people were like, how far is Facebook actually going to go? And now you look at what a company like that has done with different revenue streams through partners, through, and in a lot of cases for them it was buying and selling data, which now is hugely frowned upon in most cases, without consent. But when you look at the different partnerships they have, that shows you one revenue stream to do it. So, kind of transforming the way I view partnerships with my company, the Next Unicorn, and especially the product that we have with Minerva Engine. We do have our customers who we consider partners, and we love using the word partner because we work very closely with them, and it really is a partnership, because if they're not getting value from us, then we're not doing our job. So when we go in on a project together, it really is a close collaboration between my company and our customers. The other aspect is the vendor partnership approach. And
Yeah.
that takes a couple different sides, where there's vendors that my company uses, and we're dependent on their services. But there's also relationships that the Next Unicorn's driving forward through Minerva Engine, where we're trying to integrate partners deep into the way the product's actually used and the way our services are used. So there's a couple different types of partnerships. One is referral partnerships, where it is working closely with companies that are either complementary or have some kind of the same target market, or a value proposition that aligns. And it's very easy to kind of refer customers back and forth so that customers can get more value through the partnership that exists within the company's framework. The other types of partnerships that my company's building is in our intelligence reports that we create for companies. We will actually work with partners that have valuable services. One is workforce restructuring company that outsources certain roles throughout the globe for companies, typically larger companies. Another is R&D tax incentives that we're working on integrating into reports. So our intelligence reports can actually flag when a company will benefit from these services. And it's almost like taking your car into Pep Boys, except you're taking your company into Pep Boys. And it says, hey, you have really high R&D expenses. You could benefit if you're not leveraging services like these that exist. And it actually links the customer or provides them info to be able to leverage the service. And it's free for our customers. Our partners who are providing these third party services love it because we're kind of highlighting and referring clients their way. And the customers love it because some of those services can have a substantial impact on their company. And it's sometimes things they've never even thought about. So being able to have an intelligence report flag something
Oh, yeah.
to create that growth is huge.
Yeah, totally, totally. That makes a lot of sense, and it just to add to that, right now what I do with my clients is put together what I call an ecosystem map. So,
Mhm.
you're in this industry, this is your vertical, these are your potential customers, and so on. And then when you take the camera a little bit back and get a broader picture, you start to see that there's all these other industries, or even companies that they might have thought are competitors, but they're not really. I mean, they may be competitors in one section of their offering, but they could be a complementary partner in the other section. So it kind of sounds like the research reports that your company puts out, and it's a great add-on. I mean, it's a great aspect of that can benefit the customer in ways that they hadn't anticipated. So yeah,
Yeah,
thank you for that.
of course. Yeah. And to go deeper into what you just said, where sometimes to kind of see the full value proposition there, you have to zoom out a little bit and really see the whole ecosystem. And I think there is a ton of value in that, especially as founders, as part of small companies. It's very easy to get wrapped into the central product that a company is creating, which is important to get that right because it is the central kind of gravitational force that brings everything together. But at the same time, you're not just um, bringing people to a product that is solving their problem. You
Right.
are building an ecosystem and a relationship, and it is a more complex kind of living, breathing thing. I like to tell people their companies are much more than just if you're looking to tighten a screw, we have screwdrivers, and that's great. But a lot of places have screwdrivers. What brings me to your place of business? And then you look at some of these places that are okay. Well, we sell screwdrivers. We'll also assemble your entire desk or house or whatever they're doing. They have these additional services and they create ecosystems by doing that. And it really is synergy across the board to different products and services that are built around a central purpose and a central idea and mission. But it to monetize it and to really create that ecosystem that customers love, you need to evolve it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Greg, and thank you, Gary.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's all you got. I'll move you back to the audience until something else comes up. But yeah.
That's
All right, cool. All right, give me one second here. Da, 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 da. All right. Okay, so those of you new people joining on LinkedIn, on Twitch, on YouTube, if you have questions, I'm already berating you in the text chat, but now I'm gonna berate you here in camera and mic. The reason why we do this is so you can ask questions of mentors. So Craig's here to answer your question. So please move from lurker to interactive participant so you can make use of this opportunity to pick his brain. Yeah, please. I don't like posing all the questions, Craig. I did
Yeah.
not
Well,
prepare questions. But I do have one that touches back on what we were talking about a little bit right before AJ came up.
yeah.
Um, I think something that a lot of people overlook, regardless of what role and experience, sometimes the most obvious thing is kind of slip out of your brain, especially when you're under a lot of pressure. You're a founder, you're running the whole thing with like a limited team, and then as that company evolves, things don't get a lot easier. There's a lot of times they get a lot more stressful, more pressure. There's a lot more moving parts, bigger milestones to meet, all that stuff. And the same problems can like kind of infect your brain. But one of the main problems I see a lot of people have is they don't take the time to properly contextualize what stage their business is at while they're in the thick of things. And often they're trying to meet a milestone that is maybe 2 stages ahead of where they are right now in their life cycle. That's completely irrelevant for the moment. And it leads to them skipping steps again. So I'm curious, like, how do you contextualize what stage you're at as a business and make sure that you're making the most informed decisions that are the most relevant to moving forward in the most risk-free, effective way possible?
Yeah. This is a great topic because there is more than one way to think about it, and to look at what stage a company is in, and what they should be prioritizing. I'd say the first resource that you can go to is looking up information about um, seed stage investment firms or VCs, and look at what they're looking for if you're early stage, and then kind of go there and look at series rounds of funding, because that reveals a lot about what priorities companies are typically focusing on at certain stages of their growth cycle. So that is one way to look at it. The other way to look at it, which is a lot more, I want to say both creative, but also the much more psychological in terms of how markets work and how products evolving in the market actually grow and scale, and hit a tipping point. There's a very good book called Crossing the Chasm that gets into how a company can reach that tipping point from like early adoption, or get past early adoption and really hit growth stages, so that they can kind of hit that mainstream adoption part of their life cycle. And there's a lot of great information on that. A lot of it has to do with buckling down on hitting a very specific market segment. They call it beachhead strategy, where you're really doubling down on getting your product to your best customer, capturing a single market segment. And before you start focusing on all the other different markets, making sure you're able to sustain one market and really get a foothold in it, before you move on to the next, and then you see what adjacent market segment you can move into that your product's complementary of. So that, I kind of got ahead of myself right there, because before getting into all of that, you want to find product market fit. And I think that's a lot of times where the kind of VC insight and landscape comes into play really well, because that's one of the main things they focus on is R&D, making sure a product can actually hit that MVP stage where they have something that can sell going to market, and founders really buckle down and focus on that aspect. I think product market fit is one of the most important things to be able to figure out. And much more, a lot of founders focus on marketing because it's in everybody's face. And one of the things I tell founders is that until you have a couple customers that love your product, and they all have attributes that you realize and recognize right away, um, and you piece things together, and you've done a lot of research with them and on them to evolve the product as it goes along. That's the most important thing to do in the early stage, and I think founders should concentrate on that well before marketing, and then focus on sustaining customers and managing churn. Because if you have customers who are churning, which means they're leaving your product or your company because it's not providing enough value to them, it makes absolutely no sense to market when that's happening, because all you're doing at that point is paying money to advertise to people who are going to leave you as soon as you acquire them and spent that money to get them in the first place. And it's a lot harder to bring those people back to your product, if you do make those improvements eventually that were kind of fell short with the value proposition. So keeping that in mind, during different stages of a company's life cycle, there are different things to focus on. Typically, my company focuses on the growth stage of companies where they have found product market fit. Maybe they've hit a plateau and things are stagnating a little bit and they want to see how to grow it faster, or maybe they're growing and they see other opportunities now that they're generating a lot of revenue, and they're like, hey, what if we expand into this product, or what if we were to acquire this company and package things together, or what if we were to expand into Southeast Asia or Australia? Like, what's the market look like there? Those are things that my company looks at for gathering the intelligence and being able to make really strategic moves that will accelerate the growth of a company once they have the options and the ability to kind of flex their muscles and move around the market a little bit easier. We help them do that. So um, that's kind of the growth stage. And I'd say once a company hits the growth stage and kind of catches stride there, one of the big things to look at is um, how technology is advancing, or the market and the products within the market, or the problem. As the world evolves, the problem you're solving evolves. Sometimes a problem could become completely irrelevant, seemingly overnight, because of some kind of transformation, whether it was with technology or with the market or with the world itself. So that's all really important things to look at. And those are the things where it gets fun because you want to predict things a little bit, but logically off of what you're evaluating in the world. And it's really important to stay in touch with both the customer. I always say never stop asking customers questions and asking if you can pick their brains and work with them. Obviously, you don't want the entire relationship to be make the customer feel like they're being interviewed or interrogated constantly. But any way you can, with as little friction as possible, gather feedback and insight from your customer and the market. Uh, you'll be able to create a more sustainable company, definitely for a longer and one another good book, just to throw out a couple more titles: The Innovator's Dilemma. If you're creating a tech firm or a tech company, it talks about some things that are almost, they seem inevitable at times, where when large companies try to pivot while their technology is kind of hitting a transformation, it gets very hard for the larger, more kind of established a company is. And this is the very kind of end of the life cycle to kind of close the loop on this. It gets very hard for large tech companies to move fast unless they're making acquisitions of companies that are ahead of the curve and things like that. So when you look at these companies like Facebook and how years back they acquired Instagram, because there were social media trends that were changing that. If Facebook were to just go and create their own Instagram kind of side project, um, they'd be battling a market share battle that might drastically conflict with their own interests. And then you have companies like Microsoft that wanted to enter the social media space, but with as little kind of that upfront, very elaborate, or I don't want to say elaborate, but very visual, kind of high impact. Okay, we're entering the social media market. They didn't do that. Microsoft acquired LinkedIn. Most people don't even know that LinkedIn is a Microsoft product now, because it runs as if they never really acquired them. But Microsoft has the advantage and benefit of leveraging all of the data and the services and insights. And when you look at what's the value of an enterprise software tool owning the biggest enterprise software or enterprise company social media platform on the planet, the value proposition kind of never ends there between the synergies of the two. And we don't see that, but that's what companies do in the later stages to stay relevant and to really be able to make these power plays. So that's another thing to look at.
Yeah, I love a couple keywords that you keep using, and then the main one's value. You keep going back to value, make sure the value's there with your customers, and again, it echoes a lot of what we talk about in these office hours and myself, and in regards to make sure the experience people are having is enjoyable, make sure it's beneficial, thus it has value to them, right? And what you're talking about at all stages is continuing those conversations to stay relevant and valuable. And that's a great example, or a great example of this failure is MySpace, right? MySpace, I know some of us probably weren't alive that are watching, but at the time, MySpace was the social network. And it seemed like they would never go away. But Facebook came out, and as Facebook continued to create a more enjoyable experience with more benefits and more value, MySpace stopped caring. And the experience became atrocious. And the value, the benefits, diminished and eventually were gone. So everyone jumped ship. They're like, what the hell are we doing on MySpace? We can't even use it to communicate with friends anymore. We can't be social anymore. Let's go over here, right? And it's one of these things where you can have product market fit, have it for a long time, but if you're not doing like you're saying and continuously having those conversations to make sure you're always being enjoyable, beneficial, and valuable, it doesn't matter. It's not something that you have forever once you achieve it. So it's really great to hear you bring that up too.
Yeah, it's important to really kind of analyze and learn human nature too, because at the end of the day we are all people. And I'd say both learning how people work and learning how companies work. And companies are definitely, I'd say, even they're complex in a different way than learning human psychology. When you're selling B2C, there's very specific things of a customer, what's going to get them to make a purchasing decision, what's going to get them to want to not just use your brand, but support your brand and kind of have that die hard, okay, I'm only going to buy your brand moving forward because I feel at home. I feel like I'm being taken care of. I'm getting the value that I'm looking for. And companies have a very similar thing where they have procurement teams that are purchasing products. They're all looking for something. I mean, a lot of times in a company, they want what's going to be most cost effective for them, but not always. There's ways to create relationships with companies where they will they won't switch vendors if you're a company's vendor. They'd rather stick with you, and not just because you're the cheapest, because that's only one factor of many that creates value for a company. You can operate on cost effectiveness, but there's more than cost effectiveness to create that experience and that value for a customer. And sometimes it has to do with the product itself and the quality of the product itself. Sometimes, and I'd say almost all the time, it has to do with the people that are working in your company and working with you to create these late relationships and to deliver the value. So never underestimate the people that you bring into your company to help you drive the company forward, because that is the biggest value driver of any company, period.
No, absolutely. Again, this comes up a lot. Like those relationships, if they're authentic and those relationships are enjoyable too, the amount of compromises people will make simply because they like being around someone, they like working with someone. It's astounding. Like I learned this early on as a photographer, and I've shared this story before. Like I had a couple of photography teachers who were working professionals. One of them was extremely successful, making like I think $30,000 a month in royalty checks alone because he was working with all these A-list celebrities, doing portraits, exclusive portraits. But his quality of work was that of a couple of my friends in high school. It was astounding when I was like, what the hell is going on? How can this person with this skill level be so incredibly successful and thriving at this level. And then he was teaching, a celebrity portraiture class, and he broke it down. He's like, no, look, it's because of who I am and the enjoyment that people get from me, and that's what I use to build my brand, and I build these relationships, and I get work because of that. And it's like, oh my goodness, it blew my brain, and I was like, that makes sense. I get it. Why am I like? It was really cathartic too, as a younger kid who was like, I need to be the best photographer in the world. It's like, wait a second, I can ease up on that pressure. Just focus on being a good person that people like being around. Like, okay, cool, awesome. Let's make it so much easier. But yeah, it's the same kind of thing, right? Like, you're bringing people into your company that are able to foster those authentic relationships, give people that personal experience of working with them together, and an extension with your company. And yeah, that in itself becomes a moat. And that's something else that, going back to what we were first talking about, especially early stage founders kind of overlook this, how invaluable it is to do things that don't scale. I don't even know if that's from the same author of the dilemma, but it might be. You can correct me. But you do things that don't scale to optimize for those human connections, so you can build those relationships. And an extension of those relationships become a community around your company and brand. And that's where people are able to make those compromises on an early stage product, an early stage company that's clearly not where the vision is yet, but you get to work together to get to there and have those conversations to learn as much as you can to iterate and optimize. So yeah, it's really fantastic. Okay, we're getting close on time, so those of you watching, use the chat, post questions for Craig. That's why he's here. Those on Start Mata that can use your microphone and camera. If you'd like to come up on stage, raise your hand or use the chat to let me know, bring you up. Kind of like last call for questions. Craig, while we wait, do you have any thoughts, anything that's come up that you want to share with everyone watching?
I mean, there's so much going on constantly. So much feels like every day new things are coming up. But I do want to let everyone know, if you didn't get a chance to join and you watch this later and questions come up, definitely reach out to Gary or myself. Connect on LinkedIn. If you're in the kind of LA 805 kind of area, we'd love to see you at the lunches too, and connect with you in person. But we're always available, always making ourselves kind of what we do, and it kind of goes back to being providing value just as a good person yourself, and doing things. We're always looking to connect with people, grow and expand our businesses, our networks, your businesses, your networks, and keep the wheels moving. So yeah, definitely reach out. And also, if you know founders or companies that happen to be looking for any of the things we've mentioned so far, whether they're a startup founder looking to grow their business, definitely have them connect with 805 startups and us here on Start Mata. But also, we are a resource hub too, so we're always looking to connect people with the companies and founders and businesses that help them grow or facilitate their needs. And we're looking to connect with companies and people that provide a lot of value. So that's what we're here for.
I appreciate you plugging it, us in the community. But yeah, no, yeah, I mean that's again, like, it goes back to what we were just talking about. It's about building those authentic relationships, and being a resource to the community is the best way to do it. Um, yeah, so definitely, like, anyone watching that is in a position where you've been successful in your career in a field as an entrepreneur, founder, CEO, whatever it is, give back to the community. It doesn't take a lot. Like, just go out to an event once a month, once a quarter, and just share some friendly advice, some feedback to those that are looking for help. It goes a long way, and then you got someone that is gonna be happy to share you with other people. So yeah, good lesson there. All right, last call for questions. Uh, right on. Appreciate it, Brian. Yeah, yeah. Anytime. Feel free to DM us if something comes up. Yeah, I'm glad you appreciated it. Thank you. Um, let's see. All right. If no one else is gonna ask something, well, we got a few minutes left. Craig, okay, let's shift to, yeah, more of that later stage. So a lot of people often are looking for exits, right? They want to
Yeah.
be acquired. What sort of best practices do you have, or again, warnings to share with founders at that stage? What are some things that they can do to put themselves in the best position to exit and be attractive and find the right potential acquirers or avoid big mistakes?
Yeah, that is a question that has no end. We can talk about that for days on end. Different things to look out for, different things that founders might be seeking for their exit. I mean, obviously, money is always involved. Founders are exiting either to get a big payout that they've kind of been striving for, or they had built their company and achieved the goals that they had set out to do. So they're looking to step back and relieve some pressure and take a break while someone else kind of takes the driver's seat of the company for a while. I mean, typically if they do exit, there will be a transition period where they might be tied up to a company for anywhere from 2 to 4 years after selling it to a larger um, company or firm. The other reason might be there's a side project they have in addition to their startup if they're fortunate enough to be able to balance their time in such an effective way where they're moving on to the next thing, and because of that they know that they're going to have to switch gears and devote time to their new project while they let their other project kind of grow and be taken under a new wing. So the, there's those several different reasons. Sometimes it also has to deal with getting resources and putting resources into the company in a way that there's a lot of synergy and alignment between two organizations' goals. So, in looking at all these different scenarios and different possibilities, I'd say for founders, gather feedback, talk amongst co-founders, and deeply discuss in the most intimate discussion possible on what's going to happen with your company, with each other, with your employees, with your product, and look for a exit strategy that aligns with your goals, because it's very easy for everything to look bright and sunny on one side of a transaction, and then once founders hit that sale or exit, things can change pretty fast. And um, it's really important to look at the company, the culture, the employees, do lots of research on different companies that will be potential acquirers of your company. If it's a private equity firm, really look at what the firms have done, what their portfolio looks like, what their approach is, what their exit's going to be like, and ask to talk to other founders that have worked with these companies. I think that's one of the most valuable things is to do research, do um, those kind of reference interviews with people, just like a company would for a candidate that they're hiring for a job. They might call up a couple of references. um, totally do that for companies that are potentially part of your exit plan, or private equity firms or VCs that are part of your exit plan. Talk to other founders that have worked with them. Do the same thing for executives that you might hire. Talk to other companies, especially fractional executives. Talk to other companies that they've been part of their exits, and you'll learn a lot about their personalities, whether they might be a good fit for your company. And typically, I lump fractional executives into that category because they'll typically be onboarded to help drive a company through an acquisition in a lot of cases for some of the smaller companies. So never stop learning, asking. So there's a little bit of internal soul searching that goes on before an acquisition to make sure that you and the people impacted by the acquisition are, and I say acquisition, but really any exit strategy that's being fulfilled. Um, and also, one thing that my company offers through Minerva Engine is like a synergy analysis, where it looks at all of the different synergies, value drivers, incompatibilities, compatibilities, whether it's with culture, the product, technology, workforces, go to market strategy, and sales. We look at everything and see what aligns and what doesn't align, because the things that don't align can cause friction during an acquisition. And also look at the market. Talk to financial people. I mean, a lot of that's boring for founders. I don't want to talk to a finance person, but hey, if stock prices are super inflated and you're getting acquired by a company that's significantly overvalued, and you're getting a giant share package that could diminish into almost nothing overnight, that's something you want to know as a founder. What am I getting into? What am I being compensated with to sell my company? So do research in all of these different areas, and absolutely talk, discuss, get support. I think actually going through an exit and a due diligence process is one of the most exciting, but also stressful, and um, can be a little intimidating for some process to go through, because there's so much going on and so much being scrutinized about your baby, your company. Don't let it shake you up. It's one of those things where get support, get the experts within your company driving the things that matter most, and really illustrate the value that matters most in your company, and to the acquirers or investors, or whatever the case might be for your company. So um, always get support. You're no longer, if your company's doing the right things, you won't always be a solopreneur. You're going to be having executives, C-suite people, legal, financial representation. They're on this journey to support you if they're on your side, and they're in your company. So make sure um, you accept the support, but at the same time, make sure it's high integrity support, because that means a lot.
Yeah, it's great because a lot of this is mirroring a methodology mentioned earlier, right? You want to do your research. You want to establish, like we call them all the time, guiding principles to make sure that the culture's in alignment, the mission's in alignment, the overarching agendas, everyone's in unison about those and on the same page with them. And at this, um, at each stage of your business, those are gonna change slightly in different ways. Some of like the higher stuff, like the mission and the culture, should always stay the same. But the other kind of things slightly change depending on the context of the situation and what's going on. But you always want everyone on the same page, and you need to be communicating effectively and openly with each other, intimately, like you said, which is so important. And that goes for when you're bringing on a co-founder for the first time, or finding that first investor, or finding that exit plan, finding a new executive to take over for you because you want to move into a board role, or maybe you want to just like take a back seat and do something else, right? It just depends. But it's all about that methodology and make sure you're vetting things and it's all in alignment with those core tenets of who you are, what your business represents, what you want your business to be. So it's so invaluable that you bring attention to that. Yeah, we're up on time, so I want to thank everyone for being a part of this. We had a real big fun crowd on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Twitch. So thanks for joining in. I'm glad people were here on Start Motto were able to jump up on stage and share. Thanks AJ, thanks Boyne, thanks William. Any final thoughts, Craig, before we say good day?
Just thanks for hanging out and joining us. Hope to to see you guys soon. And like I said before, reach out either on LinkedIn or shoot us a message somewhere, and we'd love to be in touch and connect. So good stuff.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Craig. You're awesome. I'll have you
You
back
rock,
because
Greg.
you're awesome. Thank you. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a good day. Good start to the